Welcome back to this wonderful edition of the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Sena, aka Alinko, and today we're going to be having another engaging conversation. It's January 16, 2024. We thank the Lord for giving us the opportunity to come your way to engage again. It's always a pleasure to be able to have these pertinent conversations, engage in these type of dialogues so we can make our communities better and make our society a great place. And so we want to really thank everyone that has joined in this evening. We're going to be talking to scholars and I would say experienced individuals who have done well in their various fields of study and also have given back, giving so much to the world, giving so much to their communities, and actually have done a great deal of work within the diaspora community. Before we continue the show, I'd like to say we're live on Facebook and YouTube. Of course, we also live on Instagram. If you can't catch it on Instagram, we just started that. And so if you don't see us live, you can try back on YouTube and Facebook. And then, of course, you have to tell your friends that we're engaging in the community building show. Okay, we are engaging in this type of dialogue that makes our society a better place. And so get your friends and your family members so we can all have this very important conversation. And what are we talking? So what we want to look at today is the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. And a lot of times when we celebrate these things, and I have lived in America for a little while now. Before I introduce my guest for the evening, we actually waiting for another guest, Reverend Al Sharpton, who's going to be with us very shortly. But we do have Michael Thompson here. We'll be going straight to him in a little bit. But I'd like to say this. Of course, on the Progressive Mind Show, we do not claim to be custodians of every truth. But we understand that all these topics that we pick these topics that we look at and talk about week in and week out are very pertinent. The questions we ask ourselves, some of these topics are conversations that we have within our nucleus, families, in our smaller settings, in our communities and whatnot. And what we do is we bring it to the forefront and try to challenge folks to look at things differently, have perspectives when it comes to some of these bigger conversations, and which is the diaspora. And again, having spent a few years, I'll say a couple years in the United States, I have celebrated and acknowledged a couple of Martin Luther King's Day. And it just seemed like one of those holidays, and we just go through it. If you were lucky enough to be invited to a Black event or an African-American event, then you get exposed to a lot more of these things and a lot of more of his work. Or if not, then you have to really read it on the internet. That is deliberately try to research it. Why am I saying this? I think that as Africans, African immigrants, not just African immigrants, but African Caribbean immigrants coming to this country, people of the African heritage, we perhaps have not taken a close look or the importance of the work of people like Dr. Martin Luther King and his community, and how their work has benefited us, or perhaps how we have enjoyed or are benefiting off of the toil, the sacrifices, and the fight that people like Dr. Martin Luther King had put in place. Because I always say on this show that the plight and the experience of African Caribbean immigrants in this country, especially in America, is far, far better. Our transition into the political system, both the political and economic system, is very smooth. It's seamless. It's seamless. It's like when you come here, unless you're a lazy person as an African, your life just changes. It just shoots up all of a sudden within 3 months. If you're serious with your life and you want to do something, you just see a huge improvement, especially if you're coming from a place of lack or an economy in Africa or elsewhere that has less opportunities, more so less economic opportunities. and we see a smooth transition, regardless of your status. And I think that we've enjoyed these privileges for so long, and we almost take it for granted. It's like, and of course, we're not saying that people should be walking around panicking or, just thinking about things like this. But I think that it behooves on us to really understand and appreciate the work that had been done. Because again, when we compare the experiences of African immigrants in Asia, even some certain South American countries, right there, even in South Africa, Europe, in certain parts of Europe, Africans go through a lot. Even in northern parts of Africa, Libya, Morocco, Tunisia, and some of these places, people of color, brown and black people from the continent of Africa, when we sojourn to these different areas, these different countries, the treatment that is meted out to us is very inhumane. A lot of times are very inhumane. The treatment and the way we are, the opportunities given us are very limited. We are discriminated against a lot, and these are just the facts, but when we come when we come into the United States, I am yet to really hear Africans cry out to say, I am being discriminated against. There are a lot of when I go to the store or when I go to try to get some job, I don't get the equal opportunity that I'm supposed to be getting or that I deserve. I don't hear Africans and Caribbeans saying they are being treated inhumanely in African American communities or anywhere in any facet of the society in this country. And so I think that it is something that is worth talking about. And again, I am personally interested in knowing the work that Dr. Martin Luther King did, and diving into the dangers that he had to face, him and his people had to face, and fighting through all those, whether it is the civil rights, whether it's voters' right, immigration laws, helping to pass immigration laws that makes it easy for Africans and Caribbeans to come here and partake of the abundance in this country. The relationship that Dr. King had with Dr. KWAME Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, and of course, the founder of OAU, Organization of African Unity, which has now transformed to become AU, African Union. And even the relationship that Ghana and African Americans have today. I think that it's important to take note that some work was laid down, some foundation was laid in the past, many years ago. And if we're seeing what we're seeing today, it behooves, I think it's very important that we discuss it and look at it thoroughly. And that will take me to my guest this evening in the person of Michael Thompson. He is the founder of OBT Social. We'll get to find out what OBT Social is. He's also a former vice president of Verizon and has over 40 years of experience in technology. My brother Michael, thank you so much for making the show. We're waiting on Reverend Al. Hopefully he joins us. But please, again, thank you for coming, getting on the show. This is the first time. We'd like to know a little bit about you. Apart from this few accolades, can you tell us a bit about you and some of the work you've been doing within the diaspora community?
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to the show. This is, a pleasure for me to be here and to talk to your audience. Basically, when it comes to technology, I'm, I guess, one of the, early people in technology. And when I say that, first of all, I started when I was 13 years old in technology. So that was like 1983. And, I started with basic computer and everything else, and then ended up going to work in 86. So actually in 84 for AT&T Communications. And when I was there, I was responsible for telling people about the divestiture of the local phone company and long distance. But because of my computer skills at the time, they moved me from doing that into mainframes. And that's really where I got my first experience in the whole tech field. And I was in the right place at the right time. And as time went on, 1986 rolls around, I go to work for Quantum Computer Services, and they end up having financial problems and everything else, and they laid us off, and they filed bankruptcy. So when they filed bankruptcy and they got everything clear with the courts, they came back, they called us back to work and said, okay, here's your pay, and we changed the company name. And I really didn't care about that at the time. So I basically said, okay, you know, what is the company name that we'll work for now? He said America Online. So I was one of the early people with the company America Online, and everybody knows how big AOL became over time. And from there, I went to work for UUNet, building out a lot of today's internet infrastructure. I received multiple certifications on internet technology, networking, software development, all those kinds of things. And as time went on, I just gathered more and more experience. And I also did a lot of work for the US federal government and a few other countries, building out their infrastructure, telecommunications, the whole 9 yards. And then fast forward to about 2000, the early 2000s, I built a company that was a video streaming company. And I ended up selling that to a telecom that was looking to be acquired by Bell Atlantic. So we did the deal, and they needed me because Bell Atlantic really did not want to acquire them unless they had something unique and different. But what I had at the time, and keep this in mind, this was 2000, I had the ability to stream video across the internet securely, and they were able to charge for it. So they acquired me, Bell Atlantic acquired them, then they changed the name from Bell Atlantic to Verizon. And then I held the position of vice president at Verizon. And then fast forward to today, we have a company called OBT Social, which stands for Our Black Truth. And Our Black Truth is all about uplifting our people, educating and informing our people, and having fun. So we decided that Facebook, YouTube, and all the rest, they control the narrative, they control what we do, they control everything we do when it comes to communications. So I decided that we will build a comparable platform to rival them. And that's what we've done. We have 10 different platforms today that will rival all of the major platforms that are out here today. And we're located in a lot of the same facilities they are. And the equipment that we use, the servers, are the same size as the servers they use. So my goal was to make sure that people could not say, oh, you know, it's a half-done business because Black people are doing it. You know how Black people do it. They halfway do it. No, we have the same size servers they have. We're in the same building they are. So when you come and look at our hardware and infrastructure, you have to walk past Facebook, Microsoft, Zoom, Verizon, and all the rest. So I'm saying that to say that we're top notch and we're working for our people. So that's a little bit about OBT Social and a little bit about my background. So if you want to take it a step further with regards to the background and everything else with regards to what we're doing, I can tell you this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, we apologize to our audience. I think that there was a little glitch, but no, thanks for sharing a great experience with us. And I think we'll also want to know, of course, you were with Verizon. If, you know, maybe a little background with your work at Verizon. I don't know if you already said that because we had a glitch, but we'd like to know your background or your work at Verizon, just briefly.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't touch on that. So basically, when I was at Verizon, first of all, I had one of the most diverse teams within the organization of Verizon. I think we spoke something like 17 different languages on my team alone, because when I hired people based upon their skills, not what they looked like or where they were from. And the funny thing is, by doing that, when I look back now, the number of white people that was on my team was actually 1. And that was not even intentional. But we had so many different people because I was looking for people that had those skill sets that actually augment what I've been doing the entire time. So we built this system, and the system was to deliver voice, video, and data and all that across Verizon's network. So one day I decided we need content, and this was in 2000. I said, we need content, we need movies, we need music, we need all of that. So I took it upon myself and went to Los Angeles. I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles at the Regent Beverly Wilshire, right there in Hollywood. And what I did was I reached out to every movie studio and said, I am here with a system to deliver voice, video, and data like no one has ever seen before. So I only had one taker, and that was Warner Brothers. They said, okay, we're going to come. But then Disney and Sony, they were like, no, we're not coming. No. Mm-mm. And so when Warner Brothers came, and then MGM just happened to follow suit, they came and they saw me. We had a kind of informal meeting. And when we had that meeting, they saw the technology for themselves. They saw video going over 2 pieces of wire to a television set at super high quality at that time. And they saw that it was deployable across the broadband that was available at the time. So once they saw that, they left. They were absolutely amazed by it. And when they left, and I went back to the hotel, would you know, the studios like Disney, Warner Brothers, DreamWorks, everybody called me, because in Hollywood, it's a small group. And when they found out that Warner Brothers saw it and they said, hey, this thing works, he has something, everybody wanted to come. So everybody came to my meeting that I had, and we had an official meeting. And when they came into the room, it was funny because they were looking around for Mr. Thompson. I'm sitting there just like I'm sitting here right now, not saying anything to anybody, just, before the meeting time came, just writing, taking some notes, getting ready. So people said, where is Mr. Thompson? When is he going to arrive? So I didn't say anything. So I just let them talk a little bit, and I kept making my notes because it wasn't time for the meeting. And then eventually, when it was time, they said, one guy said, this is just crazy. I know he has a good thing going, but he should at least be on time. So then when I stood up and said, Mr. Thompson has been here, I said, surprise, right? And people looked at me and they were surprised. They were like, oh, you're Mr. Thompson, the VP at Verizon? Because at the time, I was one of the youngest VPs there, if not the youngest. So I presented to all the studios, and at the end of that meeting, they loved everything, so they left. Then we had another meeting, and then we decided to do a deal that was valued at $250 million. So I took that back to Verizon, and at that time, I had to take it to the board and the higher ups, and they turned it down. They told me that I did not have permission to go and negotiate on the behalf of Verizon, and they did not have the foresight to see that video streaming will become popular. And I did not give away money. I said, look, all we have to do is put money into escrow, and they draw down against it as Verizon users watch videos. And at any point with 60 days notice, we can easily kill the deal and get all of our money back. And they didn't want to do it. And then as you see, Netflix, Hulu, and all the rest, they came right behind us. iTunes, they came right behind us and did deals with the studios, and the rest is history. If Verizon at the time would have done exactly what I had set in motion, who knows? Apple may not be the Apple that we know today, because Verizon would have had a much larger footprint, would have been in earlier than anybody.
Wow.
So it was a crazy situation, And then, needless to say, I left shortly thereafter. And I know that there were some other people who left at the same time. And, but that was my experience at Verizon.
What year did you leave Verizon?
I think it was 2003.
Okay. And before you became vice president, what year was that? What year did you become vice president of Verizon?
It was 2000. And actually, I was part of the team or group of people that was there when they were coming up with the name for the company. So a lot of people don't know how the name came about, but
what was the name before?
It was Bell Atlantic. That was the name of the company. Bell Atlantic.
Then before he got transformed, before he got changed to Verizon.
Verizon, right.
Do you know why it was changed to the name was changed?
Yeah, because at the time, Bell Atlantic was acquiring all kinds of companies all around the country. They acquired GTE and, some other ones and all of that. Uh-huh. So when they were bringing all these companies together, they said, okay, it's time to change the name because we're getting to be a big company with all these assets and everything else. So the bottom line is they hired a marketing firm to come up with a name and all of that. And at the end of the day, we decided on Verizon because it was growing both vertically and horizontally. So that was Verizon. So
at the time, how many Black people were at the top level executive positions?
Okay, the president of Verizon at the time, Bruce Gordon, he had been there since like 1968, and he was Black, and he was responsible for the whole retail division. And I think under him, he was responsible for about 60 to 80 billion dollars of their revenue, somewhere right around there. I can't remember the exact number, but right between there. So he was a huge part of the company.
Fantastic. Michael, thank you so much for sharing. We're going to be going into the other side of the conversation of the topic today. We wanted to get into Michael Thompson's background, some of his work, and OBT Social is very, very interesting. We would like to know what state, where you are currently with that project, how, of course, people can jump on. We would like to know all those details but we also want to connect with Reverend Al, who we are still waiting for. But today's conversation, we definitely will want to look at Martin Luther King's Day celebration. It was yesterday. We know we celebrated it. It's all done. There were a lot of activities leading up to Monday, from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All kinds of organizations and communities were having different kinds of organizations in celebration of Dr. King. But today is our show days, and so we decided to have a special on the celebration of Martin Luther King's Day, and then if Africans really have any significance of that day to our thrive and our well-being in America. What does that day mean to us? If it does at all, do we even look at it as a special day for us, not just because it's one other holiday, but something that we can really connect with as Black people or people of African heritage? And so we want to be able to, have an open conversation with that. And Michael's going to help us. But Reverend Al has a special relationship with Dr. Martin Luther King. He is the first individual, and the first and only individual that was ordained as a pastor by Dr. King. And he had a lot of working experience with him. He's a wealth of knowledge, and we hope to get him in the studios to help make that connection. And I said earlier when we started the show that how is it that Ghana and African Americans seem to have a very unique relationship today? Yes, there was a year of no return, which spiked that, but the year of return had to come from somewhere, and that's what we want to dig in. But Michael, you've done a lot of work within the diaspora space. firstly, what has been your experience when you interact with African immigrants, Caribbean immigrants, as a Black American, and having succeeded in your academic areas, your field of study, and your career? You want to share some of your experiences with your encounter with other Blacks?
Okay. Well, actually, first, let me say this. With regards to everything that I do, I have to say that Dr. King was very instrumental in helping to lead the way for me to be able to do the things that I'm doing. So to him, I'm thankful for that. I don't agree with all of his methods that he utilized, and I believe that he was changing as as he had gotten older and everything else, because he made some comments and statements to that effect. But nonetheless, what he did actually made it possible for us to do a lot of things that we're doing. And when you asked me the question about my interaction with Africans, being an African American myself, all of my experiences actually have been wonderful experiences. Whereas I've heard people say, "Oh, Africans don't like African Americans" and all of that, right? I have not encountered that. I've spoken to a lot of African people, and I have not encountered it. And when I think about it deeply, and I've spoken to other people, I think that some of the stuff that people are talking about is that they feel that they hate some of the ignorance that we do here. Okay, everybody does ignorance, but I'm gonna speak about us here. Some of the things that we do, like killing one another and all this robbing and the whole 9 yards, right? I've had some African people say that is just totally crazy and ridiculous, and they didn't want any parts of it or be around people that partook in any of this kind of stuff. And which I could not blame them. Maybe that's some of the feeling that some people get, because I'm going to be honest. I don't want to hang around people that's doing nothing, that wants to just do drugs, fight, argue, and carry on. I have no time for that. So I can't really say that that's an African thing. That's just a people thing, in my opinion. But when I was in Ghana, and I took the oldest living survivors of Black Wall Street to Ghana. Mother Fletcher was 107 at the time. Uncle Red, he was 101, and he has since passed on. But they wanted to go to Africa, so we decided to take them to Ghana. And when we went there, we were welcomed with open arms by everybody, from the president on down. There were no issues, no hate from not one person that was African. But let me just tell you this. The only hate that we did get was from African Americans. And that was a interesting dynamic to actually just see that, because you have a lot of African Americans that go there, and I saw this firsthand, that talk down on the African people because, for example, our US dollar at the time was worth 6 to 8 times more than the Ghanaian CD. So they figured they had more money so that they could talk down and all that kind of stuff. I saw some of that there, and so that wasn't too good, and and I spoke up on it, but
right. Which year was this? I'm sorry.
Oh, this was 2 years ago.
Okay, 2 years ago, you took some of the you took 2 survivors of the Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Which one is it?
Okay, it's Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing. The massacre. It's actually called a massacre.
Right. So you took 2 of their survivors
and their families.
And okay. And then you had this experience which you just narrated. Do you think that story that you just shared with regards to some African Americans that were talking down at Africans because of the money, would you say that is more so, that does that reflect, in your opinion, on the opinion of the general African American community that have been going to Ghana?
I've heard some Ghanaian people say that was fairly common to happen.
Okay.
But to be fair,
yeah,
the African people that I encountered there that were wealthy, they treated the common people like dogs. And I'm just like, come on, we got to do better as a people. But
Okay,
so
you just want to be real.
Yeah.
No, I said you just want to be real.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Some of the wealthy people were treating the Ghanaians, their own people, as dogs because they had more money than them.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that as a Ghanaian and an African who had lived on the continent, you are not far from the truth. And so that is very pathetic. It just goes to this mindset that we have towards each other, right? So thankfully, you've had a good experience here where, in terms of your interaction with Africans, right? It has not been negative, yes. Nobody would like to hang out with people who don't want to do stuff for themselves, or people who want to just live a negative life, hang around corners. Even in Africa, we don't want to hang out with people like that. So we're not going to come here and hang out with folks like that. So good. Thanks for sharing. I think what I'm trying to deduce is that there is some type of disconnect, or there's a mindset that we have when it comes to the way we treat each other. Now, from what you've seen or what you saw in Ghana, rich Ghanaians treating their fellow Ghanaians who don't have money, or poorer Ghanaians, as the word you used to describe it. Can you compare that to how Europeans, white people, Caucasians, let me put it that way, Caucasians, Jewish people, even Asians, in your experience in this country, you think they have those type of attitude towards each other?
They don't have that attitude as much towards one another. I can tell you this, they direct it at us. As Black people, no matter where we are, they think that they're above us. But I got to tell you, just to be fair, again, in some of these other countries, they do treat their own that don't have as much as them. They look down on them as well. So that's just keeping it real. But I have not seen it as extreme as when I was in Ghana. That was extreme. But I've seen rich white people talk down on poor white people, and it's not as bad. I've seen Chinese people talk down on poor ones. It's not as bad as what I experienced.
But we just do it more.
Right. And more harshly.
Apart from Ghana, which other African country have you visited?
Actually, that was the first, not the last for me. On my way to Burkina Faso and Zimbabwe. So that is my second and third.
Okay. Outside the continent of Africa, are there any other countries that you visited?
Just Europe a long time ago, but nothing recently.
Okay. And how long did you spend in Europe?
About 10 days.
Okay. And of course, so I'm sure that was like a working experience for you more so. All right. Thanks for sharing, Michael. We're still trying to get Reverend Al on the show to help us make the connection between him and Dr. KWAME Nkrumah. We apologize that it's taking some time. We're working on it. Please bear with us. In the meantime, we're talking to Michael Thompson, who's had over 40 years of experience in technology. He is the president and chairman of OBT Social. You had spent some time talking about OBT Special. You also said something that I want to go back to, that Dr. Martin Luther King had made certain utterances, or maybe some of his maybe actions or decisions you did not like. Would you want to elaborate a little bit more on those specific things and why?
Okay. Well, for example, I know he was fighting for the equality of our people, and I commend that wholeheartedly. But the thing that really hurt us was that before all of that, we had our own baseball team, basketball, our own stores and restaurants and all of that. And if you notice, that's when the money stayed in the community. But after, segregation, desegregation and all of that, right? We, as a people, started to go to white establishments, taking the money out of our own communities. And see, that was a big problem. And I'm a believer of, don't beg people that don't want you around them. Build your own, do your own thing. So that's where I disagree wholeheartedly. Because yes, we should be able to mix and do whatever we want. But again, if they don't want you there, build your own. We have to do our own. And see, that's why right now we have no power or control over anything, because we wanted to mix in with what they had, diluted all of our power and all of our resources, giving it all to them. And that money is now circulating within their families, within their generations, and not ours. So that's why later on, Dr. King said that he was going to DC to get his check, because he realized this, that money was actually going out of our communities and nobody cared. And then that's when he became more of a threat. And then, the rest is history. So that's just my opinion on that piece. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Apologize for the technical glitch. Do you think that what you just shared, and thanks for sharing, is that a huge conversation within the Black community in this country?
It needs to be. It really needs to be a huge conversation, because we need to support more Black businesses. But let me just tell you this out of fairness, that a lot of times when you do business with a Black company, they don't give you the service. They act like you're doing them a favor. They don't want to give you the service sometimes that we deserve. But then on the other hand, as a consumer, we come in and we say, oh man, I knew you're going to hook me up. We have to do business with one another the same way we do business with everybody else. And when we start these businesses, we have to make sure that we're equal to, if not better than, what they are doing or what they are capable of, because that's the only way that we're really going to, step it up and support one another. And we have to get rid of this brainwashed mentality as well, whereas we don't want to work with one another. So, so that's my thoughts on that.
Man, we had Reverend R on. We just lost him. We literally had him on. Please pardon us. Hopefully we can get him into the studio. Maybe he can just call in and engage with us. We're getting him back on here. Reverend R, we see you. Can you hear us, Reverend R?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic.
Great. Awesome. I just need you to look to your right a little bit, if you don't. No, the other way. Okay, there you go. Fantastic. Okay. So now you can see us, right? You see Michael?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us, yes. Reverend Al Sampson. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. This is the first time you and I have had off-camera conversations a lot of times. I'll let you give us a bit.
May I respond to what Michael was saying about Dr. King with the?
Yes. Before you respond, I just want to let our audience know who you are, and so which is very important. So you have an organization, and it's called the World. You are a board member of the World Mayors Conference.
Yes.
And what is that? What is the World Mayors Conference?
Michael and I are a part of that.
What is that? What do you do?
There's a brother named Johnny Ford, who's a minister down in Tuskegee, Alabama. He was the first Black mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama. And then after he became a mayor, he formed an organization about 35 years ago called the World Conference of Mayors. Mm-hmm. And with Johnny, we went all over the Caribbean and the African countries and hooked up with other mayors. And now it's called the World Conference of Mayors, Towns and Villages, and what we call the Triangle: Africans of the homeland, Blacks in America, and Caribbean, Canadian brothers and sisters.
Thank you so much for giving us that background. And you also the first and only person alive ordained by Dr. King. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, I was on the staff of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the organization founded by Martin Luther King, and I was the assistant director of chapters and affiliates of all over Black America with Reverend C.T. Vivian. I was the assistant director, and before I did that, I walked into Dr. King's office in 1965 and said, "Dr. King, I've got license to preach, but I've never been ordained, and I'd like you to ordain me." He only ordained three men. One is Homer McCall, who went down with me at Ebenezer Baptist Church. The other brother was Albert Love. Those two brothers were assistant pastors of his daddy's church, but I was the only minister that he ordained that was a member of his organization,
Okay.
the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and his wife gave me a Martin Luther King watch.
Mm.
And I'm in her book as well as his because we lived together on the west side of Chicago when we came to uh, deal with the whole issue of in slums and desegregating of black folk with real estate. There was a time in Chicago where black people were very segregated from
Mm.
white communities.
Right.
Mm.
Thanks for that background as well, Reverend Al. You also had said to me before how why you moved to Chicago and started what I don't know if I'm getting the word right, but the something food baskets,
Well,
something that has connection with what Rainbow Push does. I'm trying to make the connection. Can
yeah,
you please?
it was
Yeah.
Operation Breadbasket. That's what you're talking about.
Right. Right.
Yes, that was founded by a brother named out of uh, Philadelphia,
Okay.
um, and that pastor came to Atlanta, uh, and he ended up uh, working with Dr. King, and I'll remember his name in a minute, but he also took a delegation of us to Africa, and he gave it to Dr. King. And when Jesse became a part of our staff with his involvement with Dr. King down in Selma, Alabama, and then he became a part of the staff with us when we came to Chicago. I
Mm.
got to Chicago because Dr. King realized that we had a Southern-based organization, and there was a black man named Kenneth Clark who wrote the book Dark Ghetto, and he had a think tank in New York called Metropolitan Applied Research Center. It was the first of its kind, and that think tank was basically called Manus, and the whole idea was to show our people that we had to do research, and out of that research, our strategy would flow. And then we came to Chicago and studied under Saul Alinsky, who wrote the book The Rebellion for Radicals. And at that time, the organization was called the Woodlawn Organization, TWO. And that's where I stayed with Jesse at that time. And when Selma, Alabama broke out, like I said, he ended up going there. And I had to stay in Chicago because we knew that Dr. King was coming with the staff to Chicago. And he ended up the following year after some coming into uh, the west side of Chicago at 1550 South Hamlin. It was there he launched his program, what he called In the Slums.
Okay.
We looked at every single institution that was in the black community and the level of exploitation that was going on and manipulation that was going on
Mm.
inside of the black community. And
Right.
that's how we created
Mm.
In the Slums.
Fantastic.
We had an integrated staff, And we would say to the white students on our staff, go to the suburbs and see if you can get rental access, apartments, and homes. And they would come back with the list of all the places that being white they could get.
Mm.
And then we would get the list and go out ourselves as blacks. And the real estate industry segregated us like they did Rosa Parks on the bus.
Okay, thank you for giving us that insight, Reverend Al. I guess my question is, what I also want to know is, you spend real time with Dr. King. You did all this community work with him. You know him personally. You've seen his vision, which is why I know you saw his vision and understood what he was about real time. And I know you wanted to respond to Michael, but can you tell us how he literally, how his work with immigration policy in this country um, paved the way paved the way and has made it easy for a lot of immigrants, including African and Caribbean immigrants, to thrive in this country?
Well, one of the key things that people don't realize is that there was in South Carolina, there is a what they call the Five Finger Islands. And I did my African ancestry, and on my mama's side, I'm from Sierra Leone, and on my daddy's side, I'm Igbo, and uh, Virginia, and where they have a slave castle. I've been there in Virginia, and I met with the Igbo brothers and sisters. And then the genius of Dr. King was that he was invited by President KWAME Nkrumah, who came to Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri. I'm sorry, Lincoln University on the East Coast, and he studied the Father Divine. He studied the Marcus Garvey movement, and he studied the Montgomery bus boycott, and he studied how black leadership, based on their institutions, as well as their conflicts with white America. And then when he went back to Ghana, he ended up, as you know, becoming the first president of the country of Ghana. And on his with his prison cap, he exchanged in 1968 his prison cap for his capacity to become the first African president. And there are 6 African countries that all have the black star in those African countries. And Ghana was the leading advocate of that. And the genius of that methodology was Marcus Garvey had the Black Star ship. And that because Marcus Garvey understood that we needed to trade with the brothers and sisters in Africa and the Caribbean, which is one more time, I call it the triangle, ABC, Africans of the homeland, blacks in America, Caribbean and Canadian brothers and sisters. And when you follow the route of Marcus Garvey, that was his mandate for us.
Okay.
When Martin King got to Ghana, you will see a picture of him and Kwame Nkrumah holding hands.
Yes.
It was out of that reality that Martin King was invited to Ghana. Ralph Bunche, who became the first United Nations ambassador, uh, he was invited by Ruskin. Uh, Julian Bond's daddy, Horace Mann Bond, who was president of um, Atlanta University, Mordecai Johnson, who was president of Howard University. Both of them were preachers. And the genius of all of those brothers grew out of the fact that we always had a deep-seated consciousness. I'll always remember that just recently, Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sharpton, Cornell West, and Akbar Muhammad, we went to Ghana, what they call Elmina Castle.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I've been there, I just put my ear to the wall, and I could hear the cries of our people. And when we went with Cornell West at that time, I gave him one of my Bibles because I'm one of the biblical scholars for the original African Heritage Bible, where we look at the Bible from African eyes. We believe and understand and have the documentation from Ghanaian writers that the Bible was born in Africa, and we are the blacks who wrote the Bible out of the uh, the motherhood of Africa. And what ended up happening, my beloved brother, is that Cornell West and Al Sharpton, when we came out of the dungeon, we were able to see some young people who said, "We have no information on what you all were doing when you got on the soil of America. We
Mm,
have we don't have no history. What happened to y'all? We got no."
absolutely.
And so
You're right.
Michael is doing the documentary on me, but he's also agreed to work with me and the brother. I got other sons, I call them now, because I'm 85 years of age. And I got other sons who are working with me. Stokely, uh, uh, Steve Coakley, his son, um, who created the Boule, gave us the Boule research. His son has got a think tank in Ghana. And then Fred Hampton, uh, who calls me his father, because I was there when to help when his father got assassinated. With Fred Hampton, the Fred Hampton story, and we ended up for the first time voting Republican and knocked out a Democrat who assassinated uh, our beloved brother Fred Hampton. We created Ralph Abernathy became the person when I picked up the telephone call about his assassination in Atlanta from the family in Chicago. Uh, what ended up happening was that I counseled them and found out Fred Hampton wanted to be a lawyer. And then I said, "Well, do you have a problem if we give $1,000 scholarship out of the treasury of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference?" They were pleased with that.
Mm,
And based on that, when Ralph Abernathy came to Chicago for the funeral, he made that announcement, and the people in the funeral gave him a standing ovation with a 30-minute clapping of the fact that we saw him as a part of a struggle that we were a part of with our relationship with Martin Luther King.
fantastic. Thank you so much, Reverend R, for giving us that rich history. We very much appreciate it. It's 4 minutes to the top of the hour, 7 p.m. CST to be precise. You're watching the Progressive Mind Show. Here is where we build our communities through dialogue. As we bridge the gap between amongst the diaspora. If you're watching us on Facebook, you can feel free to share with your friends and loved ones so we can engage in this important discussion right here. And the topic for today is not analyzing, but looking at the importance of Martin Luther King's Day celebration, and if it means anything special to the African, especially the African immigrant. And I have obviously Reverend Samson, who is, thanks for the correction, one of the three people, one of the three people that Martin Luther King ordained as a pastor. He also worked with him. He's also a board member of the Mayors Conference, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the Mayors Conference?
Michael is a part of the conference also.
Fantastic.
Actually, it's the World Conference of Mayors. Is the
That's
proper
right.
World
term.
Conference of Mayors. Thank
Yes.
you. World Conference of Mayors. Michael also is the founder, and if you just join in, he's the founder and president of OBT Social. He gave a brief background of what OBT Social is. We would like to know what the status is, what and how the future is looking, and of course how anybody can join or support if need be. Michael also works with Reverend Al on diaspora matters and also some of the history that he shared. Once again, feel free to share the feed. If you want to chime in with questions or comments, we've seen some. We have a few comments that I'm about to read, and if you want to call in and share your opinion,
But let me point out one thing that I think is very important.
okay,
I don't think you need to call yourself an immigrant, because when you talk to Rick Kittles, he started out at Howard University, and he's the only one that tracked where we actually came from. And what he did was, because I'm an adopted child, and I wanted to know, because my mother died in a mental hospital, and what I wanted to know is who was my daddy. And so when he came through the African Festival in Chicago, he came with the program called the African Ancestry. And what he found out was he ended up with, and I'm one of his pastors, he ended up making me, on the matriarchal side, I had to swab my mouth. When I swabbed my mouth, he found out that I was from Sierra Leone and I'm Tiffany. And then I had to swab my mouth again for my father's side, and that's how I became Igbo with the Nigerians. And I went, and I've been to all of these places.
okay,
Okay, but the last piece is, then I wanted to find out if I had any white blood in me, because as an adopted child, sometimes mothers get raped by white males. And what they found out was that I didn't have any white blood in me. And they came to my congregation. Now he's at Morehouse College, and I'll give you his phone number and for you to interview him, because it links up our relationship where we came from, stolen by the European and the British and white people, and we were taken from Africa, and we were taken from the Caribbean and Haiti. And so I want to please ask you, we're not immigrants, and you're not an immigrant. We are the sons and daughters of the original people, because Christopher Columbus didn't discover America because it wasn't lost. Our
okay.
people were there with the Indians. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Well, thanks for again sharing that rich information with us. The general consensus is that that history was being very much appreciated. Again, the general consensus is that everybody that's coming here, we're considered aliens. I mean, that's what you have on your documents. So legally, that's what the status is. But I truly appreciate that, and I feel like of course, we're all connected in different ways, and so thank you for sharing. Michael, I was going to ask you to give us an update on what the status of OBT is and how people can join. But I know it will not be fair if I don't give Reverend Al the opportunity to respond to your comments earlier regarding some of the things that you did not like, some of the policies or ideologies of Dr. King that you didn't like.
Right. So
Reverend
let Rev go. Me and Rev talk all the time. Hey,
Okay.
I love
Okay.
Rev. Go ahead, Rev.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, and Michael is doing a documentary on me, and so I have to be humble, but still tell the truth.
Oh,
But the point is that even Cornell West and Tavis Smiley have made a historical error, and I heard Brother Al Sharpton mention it the other day. He's because he read Tavis Smiley's book. There was a man named A.J. Ungersma
Mm,
who wrote the book, The Guaranteed Income, and at the Penn Center in South Carolina, where we went every single time, any movements that ever came out of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, it was at the Penn Center. And one of the things that Dr. King was grappling with is the definition of poor people, where we found out with George Wiley, a professor out of New York. And when you go on my website that Michael created for me, revalsampson.com, you're going to see George Wiley, along with Johnny Tillman, who was the president of, she came out of California. She was president of the National Welfare Rights Organization. And then it's Dr. King, Ralph Abernathy, and I'm at the end of the table. Here's the problem. The problem is in that dialogue with A.J. Ungersma, he said to Dr. King that what we ought to be talking about is a guaranteed income. The minute a child gets born, they ought to have a guaranteed income. And that was the fundamental word that Martin King used based on the week that Ungersma met with us and strategized and brought all of the documentation, because with a guaranteed income, we end up in the same kind of area where other people who don't look like us and they're rich and white and they get a guaranteed income the minute they're born. I mean, you all, some people call him the yellow man and all that, but Donald Trump's daddy gave him a guaranteed income. And so uh, when Martin decided that he was going to move with the guaranteed income and that we were going to go to Washington, D.C. with the Poor People's Campaign, and Michael's got a picture of me on that with that RevAlSampson.com, what ended up happening was we got a chance to see that the guaranteed income is the solution for poverty, because the capitalist system is based on white people in particular class areas that they in getting guaranteed income, and Africans in America and other people who are in the world of poverty don't get any kind of an income, and that's why unions are very popular in America. And now here's the interesting point. The reason why Tavis Smiley and them and Cornell West, the historical mistake they make is Dr. King didn't get assassinated because of the Vietnam War. That's a misnomer. He got assassinated, and he knew about it 1 year before that, and where the black FBI agent told us that that was going to happen. But the reality was Dr. King got assassinated because there's a man named Congressman Walter Fauntroy, who was Dr. King's particular minister out of Yale University, who had a church. And in the Shaw area of Washington, D.C., Walt Fauntroy took every single policy and program and brought it into that particular geographical area where his church was. The government knew, and everybody knew, that Martin Luther King could have shut the country down because black people who worked for the United States government with G7s, G10s, G15s. When I was at Shaw University, students who came from Washington went back in the summer and worked with their mamas and daddies who were working for the United States government. Very quickly, when Minister Farrakhan did the Million Man March, and I was one of the speakers of the Million Man March. We took 15 buses out of Chicago. Nobody else took that amount of buses but me, and I named each bus after one of my ancestors, our ancestors. And when we got to Washington, don't ever forget, the president left, Congress shut down. When 2 million black men who landed there, and they landed not what they did in October 6th to create a riot. They landed there on the whole issue of what we call the Million Man March in our areas of responsibility. And Gaddafi saw us on CNN, and then he invited us to 18 African countries, and the minister allowed us, called me and allowed me to be the only preacher in Black America that went with him to the 18 African countries. But my basic point is the threat of Black folk, and Reverend Barber, who knows because he took a page from my book, if he says, and if the politicians and the Black caucus brothers and sisters say, we want a guaranteed income, we will be able to move with something that cuts across all kinds of stratas and all kinds of boundaries, because this country can afford to pick up the reality of an economic foundation for the liberation of all people, specifically our people.
Fantastic.
Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing this rich history and knowledge, information with us. We truly appreciate it, Reverend Dr. Al Samson. Michael, you wanted to, yes, I wanted you to give us that liberation, but the time is, it's 9 minutes past 7 p.m. If you want to call in and share your opinion, the number to do so is 815-277-5047. 815-277-5047. And we're talking about the celebration of Martin Luther King's Day and what it means to the African, Reverend says I shouldn't say African immigrant, but the Africans here, people who have left the continent of Africa, even Caribbean, to this country. How do we connect this day to our well-being, our success, and our thriving in all spheres of life, all aspects, all sectors of life in this country? And again, I said that we all know how we transform our lives when we come to this country, and part of that is we go to school, and we take all the loans, and we take, we're given, we sign on to Black American, African American work and benefits, because there are no benefits for Africans when we come here. So we ride on the tail of African Americans and the stuff that they have, and we get to partake in the goodies of this country. And then as a result, we propel in every academic field or any career field that we decide to take, and it ends well for most of us. We have been successful. Africans have been successful in this country, and I think that it behooves on us that, having celebrated MLK's Day, we look at the impact of his work on our community and our people, and in future Africans that are going to come here. And we have had Michael Thompson share some of the experiences with Reverend Al as well. So we will go to the comments, and then when we come back, we can go. We can get a bit more from Michael. African leaders. This is from Ida Abraha. She says African leaders need to step up and make Africa economically safe, secure so Africans in the diaspora can flock back to their continents, and at the same time the African youth will stay and enrich their country slash continent. Very, very true. Very, very true. Considering the the richness of the land and the abundance of the youth, the strength of the youth, I think that if African leaders do better, we will have a very great continent and curb the migration, the brain drain that's currently ongoing. Mutia says we should build our own and support our own. We IMO we shouldn't lump this desegregation with our actions. Our participation in any system is by choice. We can always do better if we as a people choose to. Dr. King didn't discourage us from supporting our own. Well, I think that was the point. I think she's reacting to the point that you made earlier, Michael. And maybe you might want to respond. Oh, okay. So you responded actually. So we would like that. And then Mutia says, yes, Reverend Elimina is a sacred place. My ancestors spoke to me there. Veronica says, Veronica Driver says, prime historical information. Thank you so much. Thank you all for chiming in. For those who have chimed in so far, we appreciate it. Again, if you want to share your opinion or just ask a question, feel free to ring 815-277-5047. I think we can come back to...
May I also point this out, that we have a brother with the World Conference of Mayors named Vince White. And Vince is down in Georgia, and he's doing what they call smart cities. He's got 10,000 black technicians. Now, that's on one hand. Michael Thompson, I'm on his board. And the genius of Michael Thompson is that we can do something that with his technology and open up. Michael is already locked in to Africa, to the historical black colleges. I work with 3 of the black colleges, Arkansas A&M, Baton Rouge, and Southern University, where I'm the only preacher with a Department of Agriculture in memory of George Washington Carver. And for the last 30 years, I've been bringing black folks, black farmers, vegetables from down south up south. Now, here's my point. President Barack Obama, and he's my friend, I'm in his book, The Rising Star, where they talked about my involvement with his election, because Michael and I do a program called the Soul Slave Pact.org. But here's our genius. When President Barack Obama became the president, he invited 54 African leaders to Washington, D.C. And Penny Pritzker was in charge of the her commerce department. She invited the man who's on that does the his corporation begins with B, where they do the stock market ratings and all of that. Bloomberg. He came and said, I'm so happy to be here with all of you African leaders. I got 28 businesses in Africa.
Mm.
And I almost, as a preacher, maybe I shouldn't confess it on the worldwide television, but I wanted to throw my shoe, or my Bible might be the better way of saying it. But the point I'm raising is we need to call for an African summit where African leaders will come into Black America. And that was the powerful initiative that Michael did when we went to the 100, listen to this, please. We went to the 100-year anniversary of Black Wall Street, and Mayor Johnny Ford was there with the founding members of everybody. And it was Michael I gave 14 Bibles away because I'm one of the biblical scholars for the original African Heritage Bible, where we look at the Bible from African eyes. We got enough information now that Moses was not Charleston Heston, Elizabeth Taylor wasn't the Queen of Sheba, and Jesus wasn't born in Europe with blonde hair and blue eyes. He was born in a little town of Bethlehem, up the street from Ethiopia, around the corner from Egypt. Now, the genius of Michael, out of everybody at the convention, he took his own time and money with his strategy and picked up how many families? 4 or 5 families that you took, Michael, to Africa, and now
Ghana.
coming to Ghana. And the value of him doing that, they were awarded land, just like the other brothers I mentioned got land.
Okay.
Then they came back on February 28th of this year and ended up giving them full citizenship.
Yes.
And in Sierra Leone, they're giving full citizenship. But I'm saying Africans that are students and professors and thinkers and people who are of African descent, we need to have a summit. We have a whole lot of conventions.
Absolutely.
The Divine Nine has conventions. The business community, Al Sharpton's NAN has good. The Urban League has good. But I want you, my beloved brother, Sina, I want you to take the responsibility with this medium, with Michael, and I'll be glad to help as long as God gives me the breath. I would love to see you set a date. If it ain't this February, then let's have the major press conference this coming February, Black History Month, and then say next year, but we're launching it this year with the committee, and then next year we're going to have the actual 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, whatever the magic number is,
Right.
that our planning committee, and the genius of that will move us to a whole nother, and it has to be what I call the ABC, the triangle.
Yes, that is fantastic. And Reverend Al, thank you so much for sharing. We will go back to the comments. A few, 2 more came, and I'd like to get them out. The number to ring again is 815-277-5047. This one just came in from Victoria Smith. She says, I think the government should allow the teachers to teach African history in the schools. And she is very right. I don't know if you meant African schools, which I can speak of, because they don't teach us enough of African history. They don't teach us enough of slavery and people living the shores, the work of the oppression, I would say colonialism. They don't teach us enough of the effects of colonialism in Africa. And
but my answer to that is, but brother, the answer is that Black churches need to open up and be a 7-day-a-week church. And with the critical race theory, based on the Project 16 with our beloved sister, we can do. There's a brother in this country that Michael knows and I know, named Al Chandler, and he has created African curriculum that was in Black schools until they shut down Black schools to knock out the curriculum, because they don't want us to know our history, brother.
Right.
But if the churches are the freest institution, the mosques, they're all free. Go on.
No, thank you, Reverend. I know that we could have a whole 2-hour show with just you alone. I mean, the time is not enough to get into a lot of the things that needs to be shared on this platform. We definitely are going to have you back, you and Michael. But because of time, I want to get some things from Michael, and then we can try and wrap up. It's been a long time. I'm back. Great show as always. Johnny Woods. Johnny, you are from Ghana. Oh yeah, this is Victoria. Vic. Okay, I remember you, Vic. Vic, thank you so much for sharing. I now remember who you are. Vic and Johnny Woods. Have you? You can call in and share this. Vic, I'm about to send you the link, and I know I said I was going to send it to you, but I forgot. Please pardon me. Your experience, Johnny Woods and Vic, do you think that as Ghanaians here and Africans in general, do you think that we acknowledge and see and have a direct connection connection to Dr. Martin Luther King's Day and how important it is to us as Africans coming here? Do you think that this is something we talk about a lot or even acknowledge? Or it's just one of those days that we just, it's a holiday, we sit at home, whatever, and we go through it. It's not like it's a big deal, but it is important that we acknowledge that which has been done for us. Because I always say, without the work of Dr. King and the Reverend the Dr. Reverend Al, the Jessies and the Al Sharptons, the civil rights leaders, all these African-American civil rights leaders, activists, and even the entire African-American community, without their work and their sacrifice, we probably wouldn't be here. All these African churches we see around would not be here. All these African festivals, we dare not have an African festival here. We might not even have the privilege to do all the things that we do, all the schools that we've got into and all the money and all the stuff that we've made in this country and all the homes we've built in Africa. We probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so in this country, at least in America. We may have hustled somewhere in other parts of the world and go through some of the inhumane circumstances that Africans go through in other parts of the world. But at least in America, we have had it very smooth sailing. And as a people, these are some of the things that we like. It goes to the point that you made earlier, Michael, that if in Ghana, they look down on the poor, and as Black people, we need to come out of this mindset. What it is that makes us look down on our own, what it is that makes us not appreciate our own, and I know there are history, there's a story behind it. Another day we can go into it. But Michael, please share a bit with us the status of OBT. Where are we with OBT?
Okay, OBT Social. First of all, if you want to join OBT Social, you go to obt.social. That's obt.social. OBT stands for Our Black Truth, and it came about because we're censored, we're not permitted to tell our own truth, and all of that. And to take it a step further, OBT Social has approximately 10 platforms that are fully deployed and functional to this day that rival all the other platforms that we currently use and make wealthy. But what we do differently than Facebook, YouTube, and all the rest, we put the money back into our own community. And before I go, I need to ring the alarm bell on this because it is so critical that everyone knows this. Right now, as it stands, we have companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Orange, Vodafone, and all the rest building out the backbone infrastructure for the internet on the continent of Africa. And that is something that is being overlooked by the leaders there. Because what's going to, or should I say what can potentially happen, is that it can cause the continent of Africa to be enslaved.
That's right.
And when I say that, it's because people don't realize this, but data is more valuable than oil, more valuable than gold. And these companies that are going in there saying we're doing the African people a favor by laying this fiber so that they can communicate. No, they're laying the fiber so that they can have access to 1.3 or 1.4 billion young people, or people in general on the continent. That's one. Then the next thing is they're building psychological profiles on each and every person because they're capturing all of their data. So they will know what our people will do before we even know. And if any of the countries in Africa decide that they have to go to war with a country that's outside of the continent, then you have Google, Microsoft, Facebook controlling their infrastructure, which means their battleships will not be able to communicate. Their airplanes and drones will not be able to communicate. The people will not be able to communicate. And Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and the rest can shut down their economies at just the click of a button. And the leaders are not looking at this. And me being a person that has built infrastructures globally and domestically here in the United States, I understand how this can be done, but no one is sounding the alarm. And this is my responsibility. And this is what OBT Social is also doing. We're trying to create that barrier between all the Facebook, Googles, and the rest and our people. And we need your support to do so. And then the last thing, we have an HBCU tour coming up February 9th, 2024. And we're taking it upon ourselves to teach our young people our history and African history. And we have people flying in from all over the world to spend 2 days talking to young people. So Howard University, February 9th, you can go to iamwakanda.com to support us and join the live stream. So that's iamwakanda.com to join the live stream. And we're going to hit almost every HBCU over the next 2 years. So that's what OBT Social is doing, and that's what we stand for.
Fantastic, Michael. You also, and I think you already talked about this, but you were able to get the government of Ghana to come here to the United States to grant citizenship to some African Americans.
Yes, they granted citizenship to Mother Fletcher and her brother Uncle Red, the oldest living survivors of Black Wall Street. They were granted citizenship.
Great. Is there any follow-up to that? I thought the citizenship was granted to them when they were in Ghana, because you had gone to Ghana with them.
Right. Well, when we went to Ghana, they were giving land and gifts and all that kind of stuff. But the citizenship never took place because it was announced when we went, but it never happened. Then we had them come here to Washington, D.C. because they had to make it official at the embassy.
Okay.
And when it took place at the embassy, that's when they received their citizenship last February.
Fantastic. So there were 2 in total.
That's correct.
Now, who gave the land to who?
It was ceded. Some of the land was given from the government to the survivors and their families. Okay. So they do have a building there, and they have a foundation there as well now. Okay.
Thanks for, again, elaborating, because governments, political parties, or government, I would say parties, political leaders do not necessarily have access to national lands. Their private land, yes. If the government wants to take up a project in the interest of the nation, yes, they have access to the land. They collaborate with the local chiefs and kings, right? The traditional rulers. They are the custodians of all the lands. And so that's why I wanted to get to the specific. Now, the reason why that is important is that we need to get our kings and traditional rulers to understand the importance of restoring our brothers and sisters back to Africa, which means offering them land and offering them incentives. It could be traditional, it could be some business opportunities, but more so land. And so the encouragement, I'm saying this to connect to the point that Reverend Al made earlier. If we want to offer more land to African Americans, which is what needs to be done, which is what the Progressive Mind Show through the exchange ceremony program we have been advocating for, which has already been done, because the king we had here, who is restoring the royalty of African Americans, we will share more information on that as we go along. So stay tuned to the Progressive Mind Show social media pages. The king came here 2022, crowned Reverend Jesse Jackson as king, and offered land to African Americans in the Volta region, in the Anglo Kingdom, to be specific. So to talk about Yahotamaklo the Sith. The goal is that every year he's going to be coming here. And additionally, we bring in business folks to meet with African American business folks, and that is something that, Michael, you have to be part of, because then we can start looking at technology and how your work can benefit countries in Africa, starting with Ghana, right? And so yes, Reverend Al, we're already working on the project, the conference that you spoke about on a smaller scale. We definitely need to scale it. God willing, we will start that conversation right away. And then hopefully next year, we can have that conference and get not only kings and traditional rulers to come here to meet our brothers and sisters in the African American community, but include political leaders and government officials. And even though it's a daunting task to literally have them come here for that purpose, because African leaders will come here if the government of the U.S. government calls them and invites them for to give them some money or whatever, they will throng here. We're not giving them any money, so to entice them to come for this purpose might be a challenge, but nothing is with God. All things are possible, and we have already
but
made the
but
foundation
but we
to
had
work in that area.
brother, but we had beloved brother Diop we had brothers from Senegal. We have brothers that 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 have been a part of the World Conference of Mayors that attend all of Johnny Ford's conventions.
Yes, so I know it's
The
going to be done.
ground.
It's possible.
My only thing I'm saying is the ground has been laid for
Yes,
us to do it. But what I'm looking at in August 19th to the 23rd of this year, the Democratic Convention is going to
yes,
be in Chicago.
right.
What I'm hoping is that we would have Rick Kittles say all of us who have done our ancestry and all of us from the Caribbean and the African diaspora and the Caribbean diaspora, if we could come while the Democratic Convention will have black politicians, male and female, if they would come and work out an international Caribbean African agenda of participation. There's a brother who's I belong to the Omega Psi Phi fraternity.
Okay, Reverend Al,
We got
let
a
me give
brother
this
that
point.
deal. Let me
Let
just
me
say
hold
this
on a
last
second.
thing.
Hold on a second, Reverend Al.
Okay, very well.
Uh, we would bring you back for an extensive conversation on this. It's 7:30, and we've gone past our time, and we want to be able to wrap up before today's show. Okay, so please bear with us.
Okay.
There's a question that you responded to, which I would like, which is a very important one, Michael. She said, "What has OBT Social been able to accomplish in Africa so far?" Of course, you responded in the text message in the comment section, but I would like you to openly respond to that.
Yes, OBT Social is creating jobs on the continent. We're also training, people from all over the continent, showing them how they can generate revenue by utilizing the platforms. We're going to be opening offices there. We're also participate in projects to help feed the local people. We're also helping to protect the continent from the likes of Microsoft, Google, and all the rest, by bringing awareness to what they are doing and all those kinds of things. And then also in Ghana, just recently, there was an event that was going on with Dr. Ericana, PLO, Julius Malema, and one other person that was canceled. Right. Yeah. So what we decided to do is we are actually one of the people taking it to Burkina Faso. Okay. So they didn't want to have it in Ghana. We're actively working with Burkina Faso to make this thing happen.
Yes.
So that's some of the stuff that OBT Social is doing.
Okay. Are you working, apart from the Burkina Faso government, are you working with any other African government on the continent?
No.
Okay. So that is fantastic. With the foundations you've laid so far, you definitely need a lot more support with your vision when it comes to technology, when it comes to data, and which is super, super important. Some of us that have experience in data management, we can very much appreciate what you're saying. It is a future. And so we're going to definitely be working behind the scenes and to see how you can help Africa, especially West Africa, those who are open, because your work is very, very important. Well, I think that we will have to bring this episode to an end. We didn't get enough time because of technical glitch. We couldn't get Reverend earlier enough to be able to make that connection. Drive home the conversation, the connection between Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Dr. King, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and Dr. King, and how they lay the foundation, which has resulted to the great relationship that Ghana is having now with African Americans. Very, very important. Those two gentlemen did a great work and laid the foundation for us. And also the work that Martin Luther King did, which is why we celebrate Martin Luther King and how it's benefited everyone in addition to Africans and Caribbeans in this country. We hope that at least, even though we were not able to get into all the details, we hope that we spark your curiosity to at least start asking questions and looking more into some of these things that we've discussed this evening. On that note, we will bring this episode to an end. Before we do so, we will take our last comments from our guest, and then we'll wrap up and come back another time. Reverend Al, I would like to give you 30 seconds, if you may, to give us your closing remarks, please.
Well, I would just like to number one, be able to say that I don't want you to do what Jesus did, where he had some disciples and he had a Last Supper. I want you to make it so that we'll be able to have many suppers at the banquet table of responsibility.
Fantastic.
I want to thank you as a young man for working with it. And because I'm a minister, I want to produce a marriage between you with your capacity and Mike with his technology. And in this marriage, I would hope that you all would ride away on the OBT train of responsibility. It's what I call, before I knew anything about what y'all was doing in the year 2024, we had a thing called the party line where 4 or 5 people would get on one phone.
Yeah.
Okay, it was called the party line down south.
Reverend,
And I want you and Michael to go on, and that's why I made this arrangement, because I was hoping that I could produce a marriage and it wouldn't be the Last Supper.
absolutely.
Amen. Amen, Reverend.
Amen to that. And for sure, this they're going to be series of these conversations. I'm definitely going to have you two, if not maybe you mentioned Reverend Skittles or somebody else. Definitely this dialogue is going to continue on this show. So thank you so much, Reverend Al. I received the blessings.
Bless you.
And Michael, please. I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just saying thank you.
You're welcome, Michael. And we appreciate your knowledge. We appreciate your experience that you've shared with us, the work you've done in the world of technology, in the diaspora community, of course, going to Ghana, going to West Africa to impact the knowledge you've gained and seeing the future of data and technology and where it's going and how it's going to impact all of us, taking the lead in some of these projects. It's very encouraging, motivating, and transformational. Really want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing. Definitely be continuing from here. Last two comments that came through. Victoria, I'll call you after the show. Please pardon me. I still couldn't send you the link, but Victoria, I have learned a lot from this program from Victoria, and I will call you after the show. Thank you so much for chiming in. We will get a chance to have you on the show to properly engage with you and others, Victoria. Georgina Veronica says, I truly appreciate all of you and further collaborations for the future. Thank you. And stay tuned, like I said, to the Progressive Mind Show. The King is coming this June. We're going to be engaging the diaspora June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. It's a 3-day event engaging the African diaspora in our food, culture, dance, in our culture, specifically food, dance, and fashion. And we're going to crown it with live coronation of kings and queens, which is restoring the royalty of our brothers and sisters who lost it. And of course, take a trip to Ghana after all of that. It's a comprehensive program, so stay tuned. Of course, go to the exchange ceremony social media pages. There is more information if you want to reach out to us for any further information regarding all of this, info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. Info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. If you want to ring, the number is 815-409-9123. And I want to thank my guest again, Michael Thompson, who has over 40 years experience in technology and also a former vice president of Verizon, founder, chairperson, president, all the accolades of OBT Social. Can we safely call it the Black Facebook?
We can, but it's a lot more than that.
Sure is.
Thank you. Thank you. And Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sampson, thank you so much for being on the show. A real treasure, an icon, a legend. It's a pleasure for someone like me, and I think Michael and a whole bunch of others, to be able to have real-time, face-to-face, in-person conversation with you, having to be able to get the opportunity to sit at your feet to learn from you, Reverend Al. And we'll find time to give you more time to dive more into all those things that you want to share and need to share with us. To all our audience and listeners, followers, supporters, everyone that has chimed in this evening, we really want to thank you, from Johnny Wood to Victoria to Georgina to Mutit to Selassie, and the ones that I don't see your name. Thank you all for joining. Remember, this is the community building platform, and to whom much is given. Anytime I'm ending the show, it's when the comments keep coming in. So I have to take this one, which is from Gionada Love. I love this. I enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Gionada. And again, if I don't see your name, you can do just that. You can send your comment, and I can read, get your name real quick. If not, Fasika, Yerga, you were also here. Thank you, Fasika, for sharing your thoughts. And Dr. Abraha, you were also here to check in with us. Well, remember, to whom much is given, much is required. Being your host, Senna, aka Alinko. Next week, Tuesday, tune in for another very interesting conversation. You know, that's all we do here. Intriguing discussions. Next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m., we shall be here engaging. Once again, have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye to you all.
All right.
God bless. God bless.
Yes.
God bless. Thank you.